Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into the incredible microscopic world that makes up every living thing on Earth. That's right, we're talking about cells. You, me, your dog, that houseplant in the corner. We're all made of these tiny building blocks. It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. So, grab a snack, get comfy, and let's explore the amazing architecture of life itself. First up, what exactly is a cell? Think of it as the smallest unit of life. It's like a tiny, self-contained city, bustling with activity, with different parts all working together to keep the whole thing running. Every single function that a living organism performs, from breathing and eating to growing and reproducing, happens at the cellular level. It all starts here. Now, not all cells are created equal. The first major distinction we need to make is between two main types, prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. It sounds complicated, but the main difference is pretty simple. Prokaryotic cells are the older, simpler models. Think of bacteria and archaea. They read like a one-room studio apartment. Everything is just kind of floating around in one main space. They don't have a nucleus or other fancy membrane-bound compartments. On the other hand, eukaryotic cells are the more complex organized types. These are the cells that make up plants, animals, fungi, and protists, basically. Most of the life forms you can see, eukaryotic cells are like a mansion with many different rooms, each with a specific purpose. The most important room is the nucleus, which we'll get to in a moment. These rooms are called organelles, and they are what make eukaryotic cells so much more sophisticated. So let's take a tour of a typical eukaryotic cell, say an animal cell. First, every cell needs a boundary, a gatekeeper that controls what comes in and what goes out. This is the cell membrane, also known as the plasma membrane. It's a super thin, flexible layer made of lipids and proteins. It's selectively permeable, meaning it's a bit of a picky bouncer, only letting certain molecules pass through while keeping others out. This is crucial for maintaining a stable internal environment, a state we call homeostasis. Inside the cell membrane, we find the cytoplasm. This is the jelly-like substance that fills the cell and surrounds all the organelles. It's mostly water, but it's packed with salts, organic molecules, and all the machinery of the cell. Think of it as the city's atmosphere and streets where all the action happens. Now, for the star of the show in a eukaryotic cell, the nucleus. This is the cell's command center, its brain. The nucleus is a large organelle that contains the cell's genetic material, the famous DNA. Our DNA holds the blueprint for everything the cell does, from building proteins to dividing into new cells. The nucleus is so important that it has its own double-layered membrane, called the nuclear envelope, to protect the precious DNA inside. Attached to the nucleus, you'll often find a vast, interconnected network of membranes called the endoplasmic reticulum, or ER for short. There are two types. The rough R is studded with tiny structures called ribosomes, which gives it its rough appearance. These ribosomes are the protein factories of the cell. They read the instructions from the DNA delivered by a messenger molecule called RNA and assemble proteins. The rough R then helps to fold and modify these newly made proteins. The other type is the smooth A. It lacks ribosomes, hence its smooth look. Its job is different. The smooth A is involved in producing lipids, detoxifying harmful substances, and storing calcium ions. So, if a cell needs to make hormones or process toxins, its smooth A will be very busy. Once proteins are made in the rough A, they often need to be sorted, packaged, and shipped to their final destinations. This is the job of the Golgi apparatus, sometimes called the Golgi complex or Golgi body. You can think of it as the cell's post office. It receives proteins and lipids from the ER, modifies them further, sorts them, and packages them into little bubbles called vesicles. These vesicles then travel to other parts of the cell or even to the cell membrane to be released outside. Now, all this activity requires energy. A city can't run without a power plant, and for the cell, that power plant is the mitochondrion. Mitochondria are famous as the powerhouses of the cell. They take in nutrients like glucose and break them down in a process called cellular respiration to produce ATP, which is the main energy currency of the cell. Cells that need a lot of energy, like muscle cells, will have thousands of mitochondria. Interestingly, mitochondria have their own DNA, separate from the nucleus. which has led scientists to believe they were once free-living bacteria that formed a symbiotic relationship with our ancient ancestors. How cool is that? What about waste disposal? Every city produces trash, and cells are no different. That's where lysosomes come in. These are small spherical organelles that contain powerful digestive enzymes. They act as the cell's recycling center and garbage disposal unit. They break down old worn-out organelles, food particles, and even viruses or bacteria that might have been engulfed by the cell. So far, we've focused on an animal cell. But what about plant cells? They have most of the same organelles we just discussed, a nucleus, mitochondria, a Golgi, but they also have a few unique features that set them apart. The most obvious difference is the cell wall. Outside the cell membrane, plant cells have a rigid, strong outer layer made primarily of cellulose. This cell wall provides structural support and protection, which is why plants can grow tall and stand upright without a skeleton. It's like the city walls of our analogy. Another key feature of plant cells is the large central vacuole. While animal cells might have small temporary vacuoles, plant cells have one massive one that can take up to 90% of the cell's volume. This vacuole is like a giant water tower and storage tank combined. It stores water, nutrients, and waste products. The pressure of the water inside the vacuole pushes against the cell wall, creating what's called turgor pressure. This is what keeps plants from wilting. When a plant is dehydrated, the vacuole shrinks and the plant droops. And of course, we can't talk about plant cells without mentioning these are the organelles that make plants green and allow them to perform photosynthesis. Chloroplasts are the solar power plants of the cell. They capture energy from sunlight and use it to convert water and carbon dioxide into glucose, sugar, which is food for the plant. This process not only feeds the plant, but also releases the oxygen that we animals need to breathe. Just like mitochondria, chloroplasts also have their own DNA and are thought to have originated as ancient symbiotic bacteria. So, to recap, we have these two major cell types, simple prokaryotes and complex eukaryotes. And within eukaryotes, we see specializations like the differences between animal and plant cells. Animal cells have lysosomes, while plant cells have a rigid cell wall, a large central vacuole, and chloroplasts for photosynthesis. Every single one of these components, from the protective cell membrane to the energy-producing mitochondria and the information-storing nucleus, works in perfect harmony. It's a complex, dynamic, and incredibly efficient system. Understanding this fundamental structure is the key to understanding all of biology, from how a single bacterium survives to how our own bodies function. It's truly amazing to think that trillions of these tiny, intricate cities are working inside you right now, keeping you alive. I hope this tour has given you a new appreciation for the hidden world of cells. There's so much more to explore, like how cells communicate, how they divide, and what happens when things go wrong. Thanks so much for joining me on this microscopic adventure today. If you enjoyed this video and learned something new, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more science content. And as always, if you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. See you in the next video.